Hello, guys, and welcome to Truth and Transparency Saturday night. Got a special episode kicking off tonight, and then a lot to follow after. It's the O.J. Simpson. It's O.J., baby, all day O.J. The juice is loose. Again, welcome to Truth and Transparency. Episode 1, breaking down the O.J. trial. We will start in 60 seconds. All right, guys, here we go. Again, hello to Bumblebee, Support with Steffa, Melissa, Nay, Blue Boxer. Lana is here. Lana is ready. Episode 1. Here we go. Real quick, the way that I will be doing this is when I break down cases and when I even want to attempt to look at cases, I don't deal with rumors or obviously you're going to hear stuff like that. You're going to hear your rumors, you're going to hear things, but you got to have a little bit behind it. So how I watched the O.J. Simpson trial with my aunt back in the day, and that hot summer of, 94? 95? And I just remember, I could have been outside, and my aunt would be like, oh my God, Lana, get in here, it's so-and-so taking the stand today, So, this trial is what got me into true crime. No doubt about it. So what's up, bedtime? Hey, Lana and Mods. Hey, Bella, what's up, girl? I put on my camera for that. Yep, just Jane 94. Yes, I watched it every day too. Yeah, see, a lot of people, it just depends on how old you were and what was up. Spoiler alert, he was innocent. Yeah, you're not going to hear me complain about that. I do believe that O.J. Simpson did not kill anybody. So I've made that known a bunch. O.J. Simpson, in my opinion, did not kill anybody. Did he know about things? Yes. When? Right after it happened. So what I believe is that after his son Jason found himself in a messed up situation, he let his dad know. And then his dad went over to the scene. And so that is where you're going. That's where, if there's any blood or whatever, it came from going there. So, I watched the Bronco chase on my honeymoon. Now that is amazing. But yeah. But as far as the reason that I want to talk about this case is I want to talk about procedures. I want to talk about all the myths that surround it. So I found what I think is the best 25 episode documentary that's out there. in terms of what went on in the trial. You guys, this trial was a shit show. A shit show. And the people that don't know about this trial being a shit show, I think you guys should know about it. Because this kind of paved the way for me to start believing in corruption. That corruption existed. And it also paved the way of a dream team. Like your attorneys, either they're going to advocate for you or they're not. And but the best thing that money can buy is your defense. And if you don't have money, where would OJ be? As far as it came to this double homicide, I think that OJ would have been found guilty if he didn't have the team that he had. So again, let's say hi to people real quick. You guys can see Jax right there. He's watching the OJ trial right now. I'm just kidding. Money buys you innocence. Yeah, it sure does. But if you are innocent, you need money, though, to make sure that you are found innocent. So I don't even want to say the words that money buys you innocence. Money keeps you innocent. Money keeps you innocent. So here I want everybody, you guys may be like, oh my God, I've seen this before, or oh my God, I haven't. But here we go. I want you guys to see how we're going to be doing these next 25 episodes, which will be roughly, my episodes that I do are going to be right around an hour and a half to 2 hours. In it, though, I used different points through each of these, which is, let's see, right here.
Divisions in this country that still exist today. Over the years, many have tried to explain the Simpson case. But we at Court TV believe the best explanation of what actually happened is the trial itself. I'm Roger Cossack, and this is OJ 25.
So what this documentary did is it took all of the trial clippings and made it into a documentary. And it is amazing when you want to talk about, we are seeing the actual trial versus like somebody just telling us something. We get to see it, and that's what I like. So this is how this is going to work, is at different points, we're going to have discussions on things. We're going to point out things. And this is a group effort to, understand the criminal justice procedures, to understand, us all having our own opinions and why we had those opinions. And then when you come across something like, I didn't know that happened. I didn't realize that happened in court. Wow. Things like that. But let's just take the myth out of it. So here it is. This is everything from court. And let's treat ourselves like we were on the jury. And let's see what these people in court that were on the jury saw. Not what the media told us, just like the media tells us today. But this is everything is from the trial. So I found that this was awesome. Blue Boxer says, or he says that they're the Fuhrman. So we'll see. We'll see who gets to become the Fuhrman. We'll flip for coins here, okay? But here we go. This is something that I think anybody that's a true crime person should watch. And if you haven't, here's your chance. And you can do it with an audience to have some fun with. All right. OJ 25. Week 1 of the trial.
From the beginning, it is referred to as the trial of the century. The people's case? O.J. Simpson killed his ex-wife, Nicole Brown, and Ron Goldman. The timeline works. The evidence is clear. The defense? Simpson has been framed. Investigators were incompetent, biased, and rushed to judgment in a way that underscores a history of systemic problems within the LAPD. But before there are attorneys, before any courtroom moments, and before any of the nonstop news coverage, there's a story of murder. 2 victims brutally killed on the night of June 12, 1994. Their bodies are discovered on the walkway leading up to Nicole's condo in Brentwood.
The crime itself was about as horrific as you can imagine.
There was so much blood. You have to remember that Nicole was nearly decapitated and bled out on the sidewalk. Ron was stabbed a couple of dozen times, and there was lots of blood. And it was a very small area, and there were 2 little kids, her little kids, sleeping upstairs.
The brutal murders occur in the upscale Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles, a safe place.
Okay, the first thing I want everybody to note, if you are sitting in the jury box here, is this may be a myth to some people, it may be not known to people, but let's all put down that those children, they were sleeping. They were there, they were present. So OJ knew that. OJ knew that his kids were sleeping there. So he is going to brutally plan to murder his wife or ex-wife. Just, they went back and forth, knowing that his kids were there.
It's where wealthy people live, with manicured lawns and a sense of security and quiet.
Where it happened in Brentwood was a very safe community. I mean, you don't expect anything like that to happen there. People always say, that never happens here. That's what people would say about Brentwood.
During that June night, while watching the 10 o'clock news, one of Nicole's neighbors hears a barking dog wailing as if sounding an alarm. Another neighbor decides to take the lost dog for a walk and is led to the bodies of Nicole and Ron. During that same night of June 12th, O.J. Simpson is picked up by a limo at his home on Rockingham Avenue. He takes the red-eye to Chicago for a business trip. Shortly after he arrives, the LAPD calls O.J. and tells him that Nicole has been killed and asks him to come back. They had seen a trail of blood at his house, and when they learn that Simpson is unharmed, they suspect he may have been involved in the murders. He returns to L.A. immediately, the police waiting for him at his home.
He was briefly handcuffed when he was talking to police, and a camera crew that had made their way around to the other part of the property captured it.
Meanwhile, the families of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman are coming to grips with the sudden and awful loss of their loved ones.
First and foremost, Nicole was involved in her children's lives. Nicole was like a hands-on mom.
She looked glamorous. She was beautiful. She was vibrant. She was full of life.
Ron was amazing from practically the day he was born. Always an amazing young man, always kind.
The second thing I want to point out is that Court TVs did Yes, Court TV did such an amazing job with including Ron's family. I always thought that his death was completely ignored. But Court TV included his sister and his dad very much so in this documentary, which I thought was awesome.
And always thoughtful. He was Kim's brother and best friend forever.
My brother was coming into his own at 25 years old. The closeness that we shared was undeniable, and that feeling of knowing that you always have someone that has your back. And that didn't change the older we got. And obviously the last act of his life proved that my brother and his soul was a protector.
Today, my office filed murder charges against O.J. Simpson.
Simpson agrees to turn himself in, but he never shows.
When he didn't show up, and then Robert Kardashian, his friend, reads this letter.
I think of my
Okay, so something that I usually don't do is give theories or give opinions on things in terms of like I can't prove this, there's no way I can prove this. But I believe that O.J. Simpson was told to take that Bronco drive. I was, in my opinion, I think that he was told to keep all eyes on him if he wanted to keep his, the authorities off of anybody else, meaning that if you don't want them to look any further than you, flee. Keep them on you because we know that you didn't do it, but I believe the defense team knew who did, and we can defend you. I do believe that there were talks about that. If his best friend is Robert Kardashian, who's a lawyer, I didn't do this, but my son did, type of thing. And I just can't turn my side. But that Bronco chase kept all eyes on OJ. There was no investigation needed. It was, he had to have done it, type of thing. So, with that said, again, I can't prove that.
And feel I've done most of the right things. So why do I end up like this? I can't go on.
The Los Angeles Police Department right now is actively searching for Mr. Simpson.
It's like when the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up, or when the Twin Towers were hit. You know where you were when that happened. It wasn't a chase in a traditional sense. It was O.J. Simpson reportedly in the back seat of a Bronco with a gun to his head, and you'd see people lining the overpasses, "Go, O.J., go," that type of thing, homemade signs. Because at this point, O.J. Simpson was still beloved, right? Nobody could believe that he would be a killer. It just didn't seem to make sense.
Mr. Simpson is a wanted murder suspect, 2 counts of murder, a terrible crime.
O.J., wherever you are, for the sake of your family, for the sake of your children, please surrender immediately.
Simpson eventually surrenders to police and is taken into custody. At the time of his arrest, O.J. Simpson is 46 years old, a legendary Heisman Trophy winner, a Pro Football Hall of Famer, a star with movie and TV fame. He has pioneered American advertising as one of the first African Americans to be a spokesperson for a major company. But now, he's a celebrity behind bars. When they meet in 1977, 30-year-old O.J. is married and Nicole is just 18 years old. They have 2 children during their 7-year marriage.
They were very much in love. I mean, they loved each other. They were husband, wife. They did, they traveled together. It was, for a long time, a very good family unit.
But what looks like an ideal marriage is actually a toxic relationship filled with violence.
Nicole, you still on the line? Yeah. You think he's still going to hit you? I don't know. You're going to leave. He just said that. He just said he didn't leave.
He looked me in the eye and he said, "How can anybody think I'm guilty?" And I said, "OJ, everybody thinks you're guilty."
How Alan Dershowitz is just one of a remarkable lineup of top-tier, high-profile lawyers brought in from around the country by Robert Shapiro to defend O.J. Simpson, including the legendary F. Lee Bailey, DNA specialist Barry Scheck, and civil rights litigator Johnny Cochran.
The dream team right there. Look at that squad. Woo!
A group that comes to be known as the Dream Team.
At this time, do you wish to enter a plea guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty. Your Honor, at this time, we would request under the law that we have a preliminary hearing as soon as possible.
I knew Johnny Cochran, and I knew Robert Shapiro from our days as undergrads at UCLA. I'd worked for the LA County DA's office and knew several of the prosecutors. After Simpson's arrest, Robert Shapiro asked me to attend a meeting. Almost every top criminal lawyer in Los Angeles was there. I remember Shapiro standing in front of us saying, "We intend to win this case. There will be no plea bargain." None of us thought he had a chance. During the 37 weeks of the trial, I was occasionally made privy to defense strategies and insights that I've never talked about publicly. For example, one thing I feel has never been made clear enough is how Robert Shapiro put his own ego on hold and stepped back from the limelight in the interest of his client, something for which he has never been given full credit. The legal horsepower of the Dream Team brings into focus the role of celebrity in the Simpson case. Not just the fame of the defendant, but the legal resources he is able to afford. During the preliminary hearing and pretrial arguments, it becomes apparent that the prosecution is overmatched and outmaneuvered at almost every turn by the defense. For example, Mark Fuhrman. He is a central figure in making the case for the prosecution as the investigator who says he found a bloody glove at the murder scene and another at O.J. Simpson's house.
As I walked closer and I got oriented to where this noise probably came from, I looked down and I saw a dark object. I was probably still 15, 20 feet away, and I kept walking closer, and then I saw when I was a few feet away that it was a glove.
Initially, and at the time, I felt Mark Fuhrman was a good cop. And I thought he intuitively did some things, particularly at Rockingham, which were the hallmark of a good cop.
It's just business as usual. They made it something else that started.
Mark Fuhrman is in this.
But to underscore how
this
the
is
prosecution
amazing.
Overwhelmed by the Dream Team, listen to how F. Lee Bailey turns Fuhrman's history into something that makes the case for the defense, that O.J. Simpson has been framed.
Once Fuhrman hits the stand, we're able to ask him, "Don't you hate black people? And haven't you said so on many occasions, and particularly this occasion, after you learned that this defendant had a romantic entanglement with a Caucasian woman? If the only evidence you have that this glove came from O.J. Simpson's home is Detective Mark Fuhrman, that isn't enough evidence to convict a rat, let alone a human being. In addition to that, we have told you in our papers, and perhaps for the first time, that Detective Fuhrman then went on within hours to suppress vital evidence tending to exculpate the defendant. So, if he suppressed evidence and claimed to find incriminating evidence, I think we hardly need go further before we have the right to ask him, and by the way, haven't you said on past occasions that you are in favor of genocide? Because what he really said was, let's put them all in a pile and burn them all. And I haven't heard that come from anyone since Adolf Hitler.
Those are the facts.
That is exactly 180 degrees opposite of the truth.
But you don't want to hear the truth.
So this is false.
I don't have to call anybody a liar.
It's the opposite of what occurred.
That's the problem with them. They always want to label everybody.
Which we know is not true.
We keep hearing about the truth.
Very misleading.
I don't think they can stand the truth.
Again, completely misleading.
They are in for the fight of their lives.
All right, are both sides prepared to go forward, Mr. Cochran?
We are, Your Honor.
Mr. Clark?
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
All right, do the people wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, we do.
All right, you may proceed. Mr. Darden?
Did O.J. Simpson really kill Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman? The evidence will show that the answer to the question is yes. O.J. Simpson murdered Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman. Why would he do it? Why would he do it? Not O.J. Simpson, not the O.J. Simpson we think we know.
O.J. Simpson was beloved at the time. He was an icon, a hero
But that raises another question, and that question is, do you know O.J. Simpson? The face you'll see will be the face of a batterer, a wife beater, an abuser, a controller. He killed her because he couldn't have her. And if he couldn't have her, he didn't want anybody else to have her. You're going to be hearing evidence regarding domestic abuse, domestic violence, stalking, intimidation, physical abuse, wife beating, public humiliation. The dominant theme throughout their relationship was his control of Nicole Brown. And the evidence would show in this case that this man is an extremely possessive and controlling individual. This is all part of his need to know where she is, to know who she's with, to know what she's doing, to control her. It's control. It's all about control. You'll be hearing evidence regarding an incident that happened on January 1, 1989. The 911 operator received a telephone call from Rockingham. We can hear the sound of a woman being beaten now, right now. And the officers arrived at Rockingham a short time later. And as she ran toward the officers, she was shouting and yelling, "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me." And the officer said, Who's going to kill you? And she said, "O.J. is going to kill me." And the officer said, "Mr. Simpson, we're going to have to place you under arrest. It appears that your wife has been beaten." And he responded, "The police have been here 8 times before. And now you're going to arrest me for this?"
She would tell me, she goes, "Denise, you know what? He's going to kill me one day and he's going to get away with it."
Finally, after 17 years, he finally got the message. It finally became clear that she wanted to live her own life.
Christopher Darden grows up just north of San Francisco. He plays high school football and runs track in college. He joins the LA District Attorney's Office in 1980, working in the gangs.
It was a big thing with Chris Darden. The prosecution was being blamed or being accused of, you're putting Chris Darden on because he's black. We want to have a black guy to basically be, you know, when the dream team was put together, like, we need a black guy. We need somebody black that's basically going to put another black man behind bars. Whether Chris Darden was their first choice or not, I think maybe he was a little inexperienced with certain things, but I think he's passionate. I think he's passionate, and I truly believe that Chris Darden thought that O.J. Simpson was guilty. You could see throughout the trial, when you guys get to watch this here, that he, without a doubt, believed that O.J. Simpson was guilty. And he did everything that he possibly could, and everything that he thought that he was, you know, that was the right decisions and stuff like that. And that's something that I took away from this, is that Johnny Cochran played a lot of games with him, and you guys are going to see that. He played a lot of games with him, and Chris went back and forth, you know, but they were brother to brother and, you know, stuff like that. And it was obvious. You're going to wait till you guys see stuff that you guys have never seen before. And I was just like, damn, really interesting. Because remember, when you're watching a trial nonstop, like what this does is this highlights really, really major points. But yeah.
And then Special Investigations, which oversees cases of criminal activity by public officials and law enforcement. He's 38 years old, with 15 years experience as a prosecutor when he joins the Simpson prosecution team.
The thing that I remember most about Chris is just how frustrated he would get and how personally he took the trial.
I liked Chris. I thought that he was busting his tail.
Me
on a
too,
day-to-day
Boston.
basis.
I think it's fair to say that I had the toughest job in town today.
Chris Darden was accused of being put on this team because he was African American, not because he's a good lawyer.
Chris Darden, it was a very difficult place to be for someone like him. You know, help the prosecution develop credibility with the black community and the black jurors. It puts him in a very uncomfortable position because he's sort of on the other team, so to speak.
It wasn't about anything except who committed a double murder. That's what it was about. It wasn't about race.
He was completely closed off, totally cold and unwelcoming, brooding. And then as the trial moved on, Chris softened and opened his heart deeper to my dad and I and our family. Chris and I are still super good friends.
What we've been seeing, ladies and gentlemen, is the public face, the public persona. It is not the actor who is on trial here today, ladies and gentlemen. It is not that public face. It is his other face, the one that Nicole Brown encountered during the last moments of her adult life.
The following program contains graphic images and language. Viewer discretion is advised.
And there he saw a sight that he'll never forget. He saw the body of Nicole Brown lying at the foot of the steps in a pool of blood. What I'm showing you here is a shoe print. Again, right here, heel print, a bloody heel print, and another one here. What you see here is what Officers Risky and Terrazas saw when they arrived at the scene. You can see here the paw prints. Officer Risky went all the way up to the end of the walkway in the bushes to a point where he was able to see.
Okay, something that I thought that is really important. When I was, anybody, look at it right now. Look at how much blood there is. Look at how much, there is blood everywhere. This is the bloodiest thing I've ever seen. So much blood. So much blood. That if you were the person involved in committing these crimes, you are going to be, this is with a knife, you are going to be covered in blood. Especially your shoes.
At that point, that it was not just Nicole, but also Ron.
There was an image that was projected on the screen of my brother's body that I had never seen before. And I remember feeling panic because I didn't know, I'd never seen it. I didn't know what to expect. And then Marcia turned around very quickly and apologized.
We did warn you, ladies and gentlemen, that this was a case that was going to have photographs that would be very, very hard to look at. We have to show you the evidence, and I apologize for the graphic nature of them, but this is the crime that we're here to examine. No one will argue about what the cause of death was for Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown. These are the blood drops at the Bundy location at 875 South Bundy. This blood drop that you see here matches the defendant. 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 You analyze the DNA and you see, can I exclude the suspect? Can I rule him out? Is there anything here inconsistent with the suspect? The glove that was found at the south walkway of the defendant's property at Rockingham revealed blood that was consistent with a mixture of Ron Goldman, Nicole Brown, and the defendant. Over and over again, we asked ourselves, can the defendant be excluded? and over and over and over again, the answer was no. The defendant cannot be excluded.
Marcia Clark grows up outside Oakland, California. At 17, she is attacked and raped, something she later says influenced her decision to become a prosecutor. After law school, she works briefly as a defense attorney before joining the LA District Attorney's Office.
You know, I never knew that Marcia Clark was raped. I learned that from this documentary. If she had a book out there, I never read it. The stuff that I read, she didn't author. But yeah, when I first, saw this and taking my notes, really sad. Really sad.
Office in 1981. By the time she takes on the Simpson case, she has won 19 of 20 murder trials.
Tough lawyer, very able, very prepared, very, very able.
Johnny Cochran was talking to jurors, and Marcia Clark was talking at jurors.
Marcia Clark was somebody who thought she knew everything, and she was arrogant and overconfident.
I can only reiterate that.
No, you don't need to reiterate if I've already heard it.
I apologize to the court. I thought that.
I mean, I can't keep doing these things over and over and over again.
She was, I would say, a tigress as a trial attorney. She had taken on tough cases under adverse circumstances and held up and prevailed. She was very facile with trace evidence cases, hair fiber, DNA, and the like.
The mere fact that we find blood where there should be no blood, in the defendant's car, in his house, in the driveway, and even on the socks in his very bedroom, at the foot of his bed, that trail of blood from Bundy through his own Ford Bronco and into his house in Rockingham is devastating proof of his guilt. And the results of the analysis of that blood confirms what the rest of the evidence will show. That on June the 12th, 1994, after a violent relationship in which the defendant beat her, humiliated her, and controlled her, after he took her youth, her freedom, and her self-respect, just as she tried to break free, Orenthal James Simpson took her very life in what amounted to his final and his ultimate act of control. And in that final and terrible act, Ronald Goldman, an innocent bystander, was viciously and senselessly murdered.
Something that I didn't know either was, those glasses belonged to her mother. And they didn't ask for them to be returned that night. It was, can you return them
As the first week of
Monday?
The trial unfolds, Johnny Cochran gives the opening statement for the defense. O.J. Simpson's lead attorney tells the jury the central themes of their case: sloppy police work and a rush to judgment.
The opening statement is not opening argument, but that's just that, opening statement. If you've had occasion to go to a movie, you know that there's something called the previews of coming attractions. And that's what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a guide, our roadmap, if you will, what we expect the evidence to show.
Johnny Cochran was a brilliant lawyer.
And here we are now in this search for justice. You hear a lot about this talk about justice.
His firm at that time was all civil rights police misconduct work, all civil litigation, no criminal.
Johnny Cochran, of course, had tremendous appeal as a trial lawyer, particularly within the African-American community.
I guess Dr. Martin Luther King said it best when he said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so we are now embarked upon.
So true, Martin Luther King.
This search for truth.
You wrong one man, you wrong us all.
Back to the South. I wanted to go to this bathroom, and I wasn't mindful of any that blacks go one place, whites go another. And so I was going to go in this bathroom. This guy said, "You can't go in there, boy." That let me know there was a problem. And I remember talking to my dad about that. Now I was troubled by that, and again, that just reinforced my belief in that things should change and my desire to change things. My whole career has been trying to represent people who need to be represented, whose civil rights have been violated.
Johnny Cochran understands that on the heels of the Rodney King beating by Los Angeles police officers and the subsequent trial, the riots are a symptom of something bigger. LA is engulfed with tension, torn apart by racial animus, and policed by a department many fear instead of trust.
As a city, we were still really raw. We were still really feeling that pain that had just happened.
I knew Johnny Cochran for years as a friend and as a brilliant litigator who specialized in civil rights cases and believed strongly in the presumption of innocence. What most people didn't know was that Johnny's standard approach was to put the evidence on trial, question the investigators' professionalism and their motives. As Johnny told me one night at dinner, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Let me try to set the record straight for you. This glove was not found by them or the officers or whatever. This glove was found by Detective Fuhrman.
The defense strategy was, you can't trust the message if you can't trust the messenger.
Detective Mark Fuhrman will play an integral part in this case for a number of reasons. Now, it's very interesting that the prosecution never once mentioned his name yesterday. It's like they just want to hide him. But they can't hide him. He's very much a part of this case. We can only ask ourselves, why didn't they mention him? I think that answer will become very clear to you as the case progresses.
We proved that there was a rush to judgment, that the messengers were the LAPD, that they had made up their mind about who did this.
It didn't matter what the world thought. It mattered what those 12 jurors thought. And Johnny Cochran never lost sight of the fact that he was playing to those jurors.
This case is about a rush to judgment. There's a rush to judgment here, but they want to listen because they made their decision in this rush to judgment. But as jurors, I'm sure you're not going to rush to judgment.
Johnny Cochran easily was the guy that I would have hired to join me if I had been first in the case.
I mentioned before this crime scene and the number of people who were allowed to walk through there, many with just their shoes on, walking right through the blood. Some had gloves, some didn't have gloves. Picking up the evidence, which will become very relevant and important to you as you hear from the experts about the contamination aspect of this and what it means, and how easy it is, a sneeze, a touch, whatever, for this evidence to become contaminated.
The defense's strategy was to paint the law enforcement agents as bungling idiots, but yet they were smart enough to frame an innocent man, but they were too stupid to pull it off correctly.
We think the evidence will show that this scene was tracked and traipsed up, and the gathering of evidence was a complete disaster. The evidence will show that this careless, slipshod, negligent collection, handling, and processing of samples by basically poorly trained personnel from LAPD has contaminated, compromised, and corrupted the DNA evidence in this case. This is, by all accounts, 21st century cyberspace technology that is being used by these police departments with covered wagon technology. The fact that blood mysteriously appears on vital pieces of evidence, and it's predicted what the results will be regarding DNA when that evidence is still in the police lab, is devastating evidence of something far more sinister.
I want you all to remember that your conduct here will have an impact not only upon the welfare of your respective clients, but upon the image of our profession for many years to come. Those who say the criminal justice system itself is on trial may be correct in that observation.
But I am absolutely appalled.
The people have a right to know.
They cannot shut me up.
They've been lied to.
I'm not going to hear it again. I've ruled.
They've been deceived.
That's why they lose cases sometimes.
Did you hear what I said about 2 minutes ago?
This is the best fucking documentary. I'm telling you guys. You guys will be like, no, don't stop, don't stop. Each time I like stop and have to come back for another episode. So, because we're going to break down things. This is insanity.
I got a phone call from Bob Shapiro saying, we'd like you to join the defense team. And I said, no, I can't because I've already commented that I believe he's guilty. And Bob said, well, everybody thinks he's guilty.
The defense team is packed with big egos and some bold ideas on how to defend O.J. Simpson. Some of them Judge Ito allows, and some of them he doesn't.
Probably be times when I'd like Mr. Simpson to be able to approach the jury to demonstrate certain things that I think are very relevant.
He showed his fucking
It
knees.
is only a blatant attempt to impress the jury with his charisma and star appeal.
The motion to allow him to exhibit to the jury his knee injuries or the result of the scarring and the surgeries will be allowed.
And I'd like, at this point, have Mr. Simpson come over to the jury so I can demonstrate the problem with his knees.
This is an incredible moment. The person, O.J. Simpson, who's up for double murder, by the way, gets to walk up to the jury box right next to the jurors. Yeah, there are a few deputies there, but he's not in shackles. And he's making a connection with the jury out of the gate in opening statements. It's a huge advantage for the defense, and this is right out of the gate. Judge Ito allows this. Unprecedented.
Unprecedented.
You have to look at circumstantial evidence. So the dog and the plaintiff whale and the evidence that was given by the dog walker, they just try to establish a timeline. And the timeline is loose because you don't know exactly when somebody was killed. You try to determine it based upon what else is going on and what else people are hearing or seeing.
Both sides fight hard to get the jury to believe their timeline for the night of the murders. The defense has to account for O.J.'s whereabouts at the time of the killing.
The timelines in this, if you're on the jury, so you're sitting here and you're like, okay, yes, I got my pad out. When did they think the murder happened? And remember, the dogs, or, the dog finds, the one dog, gets out, and then the other people were walking their dog, and then they walk on over and they find the body. What time did this happen? So what time was 911 called? What time could this possibly happen? How far is the house? Do you guys know that they did a fucking field trip? They did a field trip to Bundy. They did a field trip to Rocky. This trial, to think that all of this took place in 1994, the trial was 95, but this is how trials should happen. I'm not kidding. This is how they should actually happen. The jury should go see where the crime happened. They should go on field trips like that. I would want everybody to see Aliquippa, and I would want everybody to see everything that they're saying with that. So, but to think that they did everything that I think should happen, they were doing it in 1995. Why wasn't that being reciprocated for years to come? That's what I took from this. Looking at it now, all these years later, wait, what? Why aren't we doing, what? So,
the prosecution has to pinpoint the time of death based on a dog.
Now, what I'm about to describe to you is a series of events that proves that the murders occurred between 9:35 and 10:45 on the night of June the 12th. At approximately 9:50 p.m., Ron Goldman left the restaurant still dressed in his waiter's uniform, the white dress shirt, the black pants, and the black shoes.
He goes home.
And his friends at the restaurant never again saw him alive.
She described for you how he was dressed. I think she said with some white shirt and black pants.
Those were seen in his bedroom.
You saw those pictures as terrible as they were. He was in some jeans and some kind of shoes.
Cochran just nailed it!
He went home, dropped off a book, changed clothes before he came to Nicole Brown.
He just killed her right there.
But you weren't told those facts because it's important they keep this 10:15 time.
10:15, Pablo Fenbez heard a dog bark. He remembered it clearly because the bark was like a plaintive, insistent wail. It was like nothing he'd ever heard before.
Ms. Clark kept telling you that she had to fix the time.
This is called preparation, in my opinion. Paying attention, preparation. I mean, they have, like I said, a whole team there. So you're going to listen to every word they say. Okay, they mentioned this. Oh, God, we got them right here. You can't do this type of stuff unless you have a fucking team. One person can't do everything. So I'm going to rewind back here to the 31:31 mark. It's important because this is a key moment that Marcia Clark says something, and it's about talking about what Ron Goldman was wearing. He left in his, they never saw him again after he left in his waiter's outfit. Well, guess what? He didn't die in his waiter's outfit. He had his jeans on. He had his going out clothes on. So that means he had to go home and change, which is more time.
Never again saw him alive.
Point the time of death based on a dog.
Now, what I'm about to describe to you is a series of events that proves that the murders occurred between 9:35 and 10:45 on the night of June the 12th. At approximately 9:50 p.m., Ron Goldman left the restaurant still dressed in his waiter's uniform, the white dress shirt, the black pants, and the black shoes. And his friends at the restaurant never again saw him alive.
She described for you how he was dressed. I think she said with some white shirt and black pants or whatever. You saw those pictures as terrible as they were. He was in some jeans and some kind of shoes that are far different. And the evidence will be he went home, dropped off a book, changed clothes before he came to Nicole Brown Simpson. But the reason that you weren't told those facts is because it's important they keep this 10:15 time.
10:15, Pablo Fenbez heard a dog bark. He remembered it clearly because the bark was like a plaintive, insistent wail. It was like nothing he'd ever heard before.
Ms. Clark kept telling you that she had to fix the time of death in this case at about, what'd she say, about 10:15? She had to make it 10:15, and she made it based upon a dog's wail. Now, this is the first case you'll ever hear where the prosecution's theory is that you've got to determine the cause of the time of death by a dog's wail.
What he noticed when he pulled through that area that was right in his field of view is that there was no car parked there. No white Ford Bronco. And it was 10:39.
She said to you that the limousine driver, when he came and left to take Mr. Simpson to the airport, she told you that he did not see the Bronco parked there. It's not exactly what he said in his testimony at the preliminary hearing in the grand jury.
At 10:45, Cato was talking to his girlfriend Rachel when suddenly he heard on the wall where the air conditioner was 3 loud thumps.
They've got to keep everything squashed in there so they can tell you, oh, we had plenty of time to commit this crime. When we conclude today, you're going to see there was no time to commit this crime. They have to tell you that it's about a dog's wail when a man's life is at stake.
Was O.J. physically capable of stabbing Ron and Nicole in such a short period of time? Now, the prosecution has a workout video that O.J. made 2 weeks before the murders. The defense claims O.J. was having an arthritis flare-up that made him too weak to commit the murders.
There will be testimony that O.J. Simpson suffers with chronic rheumatoid arthritis. When it's in an acute phase, he has great trouble functioning. We expect there will be testimony that on the date of June 12th, Mr. Simpson was involved in the acute phase of his rheumatoid arthritis. And on that date, after he had played golf, the problems with his hands were so severe he could not shuffle the cards where he played gin rummy at the country club thereafter.
Mr. Cochran made some comments to you about the defendant's alleged arthritic condition. According to him, the defendant's arthritic condition became acute sometime after he'd played golf and after he'd been swinging the golf club on the evening of June the 12th at about 10 p.m. He said at some point after that, the arthritic condition became acute. Mr. Cochran told you that the defendant's physical capabilities are very limited as a result of that condition. The prosecution will show you evidence to the contrary. We will show you outtakes of an exercise videotape which was made by the defendant only 2 weeks before the murders. We will show you a portion of that videotape to demonstrate just what the defendant's physical capabilities really were on the evening of June the 12th, 1994.
Get real. We'll try it one more time. Okay, go. See?
The defendant prided himself in...
That was awesome. So that was where I'm going to give it on both sides. So Johnny hits him with the, your timeline sucks. This is what he was wearing. Team Johnny win. She comes back with, we found your dance tape, OJ. Look at those knees move. Look at him doing this. She busts this out. They show it in court. Again, team win, Marcia Clark. Again, take a look at this. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so when I saw this, I was loving life. I was like, go, Marcia.
Capabilities really were on the evening of June the 12th, 1994.
Get real. We will try one more time. Okay, go. See? All right. After all of these years, you know what I mean?
The defendant prided himself in that tape on being in good physical condition. You will see him doing push-ups. You will see him lifting his arms overhead.
Stretch the upper body by reaching for a light, or reaching for the air.
You will see him stretching.
This is a chest stretch. Just get those arms back, push them out, push that chest out there.
We're going to show you that tape during the course of this trial.
Oh God, this is sad. This is sad.
The days were very intense, and they began first thing in the morning and went well into the night.
In addition, for a little bit of time to think of other discussion, excuse me, I need to slow down myself a little bit, Your Honor. Give me just a moment. Yesterday, the other day, the court said it had to take a deep breath. Allow me to take one, too.
I've had long experience with Mr. Hodgman. I've known him as a colleague and as a trial lawyer, and I've never seen the expressions on his face that I've seen today. What I'm asking you to do is take a few deep breaths, evaluate what you have, and then come to me with a proposal as to how we proceed tomorrow morning. And I suspect you may unplug your computer and take it home with you tonight.
It may be a long time before I get home tonight, Your Honor.
He was disoriented. Later, he was complaining about chest pains and other physical symptoms.
We were working until approximately 1:30 in the morning, and we were doing so without the benefit of the assistance of Mr. Hodgman, who was taken to the hospital at I believe approximately 6 p.m.
I discovered as a result of getting tested that apparently I had an abnormality in the musculature of my heart, which had proved fatal for certain athletes historically, and I had the same thing. So that was an awkward and kind of shocking revelation.
All right, guys. Okay. All right, guys. See you guys. I'm gone.
The scene outside the courthouse looks more like a circus than a trial.
I couldn't believe this.
Get to the car so we can go.
There really hadn't been frenzies like that before, where there was just 24/7 coverage, where there were dozens and dozens and dozens of cameras.
The scene is much the same immediately outside of the courtroom.
The scene in and around the courthouse, I would characterize as just crazy. And I remember Marcia and I looked at each other, and the thought that passed between us was, we can't do this.
Inside the courtroom, a single camera is mounted on the wall above the jury box. It opens up the trial to a worldwide audience of 50 million viewers.
It was really the first case of its kind where people could watch from start to finish and watch it unfold and be frustrated because this was a real life soap opera.
Here's
The
Johnny.
headlines are everywhere. But looking at the coverage, it's almost like the country is watching two different trials. On the one hand, the trial shines a spotlight on mainstream media's racial blind spot, starts a national conversation about domestic abuse, and the reality that African American and white communities have vastly different experiences and impressions when it comes to law enforcement. On the other hand is the Los Angeles Sentinel, one of the oldest black-owned weekly newspapers in the country. It breaks with the national media and covers the trial with a clear pro-defense perspective. Its articles are syndicated coast to coast to other African American papers.
The perception that Black America had about this case was largely filtered through the LA Sentinel, in distinction to, say, the more mainstream coverage of the case.
The Sentinel always carried the news and from the perspective of the African American community. So it was nothing new to us that the Sentinel was front and center in terms of carrying the story, and the story that was coming from us, that was best known to us.
The Sentinel faces head-on the issue of race as a factor in the Simpson trial, in a way that is very different from national news organizations.
The LA Sentinel started with the presupposition that we cannot believe anything the police say, and that they have to prove what they're saying before we're going to believe them.
It appears that Mr. Cochran and I, the only two Black lead lawyers on each side of the counsel table, are somehow dragged into this issue to argue the issue to the court. And I think that may be due in some part to the fact that if anybody should slip and say or utter the word, it's probably better to have a Black person. If a white male takes the witness stand and that word is uttered in this courtroom, it will offend every Black juror on this case and any other African American within earshot. It is so prejudicial and so extremely inflammatory that to use that word will evoke some type of emotional response from any African American.
Johnny Cochran kills this, though.
Right now, at this time, to take this opportunity to respond to my good friend, Mr. Chris Darden. His remarks this morning are perhaps the most incredible remarks I've heard in the court of law. His remarks are demeaning to African Americans as a group. And so I want to apologize to African Americans across this country. Not every African American feels that way. It's demeaning to our jurors to say that African Americans who've lived under oppression for 200 plus years in this country cannot work within the mainstream, cannot hear these offensive words. African Americans live with offensive words, offensive looks, offensive treatment every day of their lives. But yet they still believe in this country. And to say that our jurors, because they hear this offensive word, they hear every day that people call, if they interact with people. We've heard this in the questionnaire. To say they can't be fair is absolutely outrageous.
Week one of the People versus O.J. Simpson ends with the prosecution on the defensive. But when the first prosecution witnesses testify, the defense goes after one of them only to have that effort backfire in a big way. That's next on week 2 of OJ 25. I'm Roger Cossack.
Okay, remember I told you guys I would do 2 episodes to kick things off. That's what I'm doing. But before I go to episode 2 here, let's, what do you guys think so far? That was kind of just like an intro. Because the rest of the episodes, what they do is they break things down. So now we go to like week 2 of the trial. Week 3 is episode 3. So it breaks down the trial and talks about what each week brought and shows you everything that was happening in that week. So basically in week 1, you got, first of all, you have to pick the jury, So everything that we saw there, like any documentary, you have to kind of have a starting point. That's what you got. Now, here we are. We're going into episode 2. And now we're going to get into the testimonies. That's what episodes like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's whoever was testifying that week on in the trial. That's what the documentary covers. And it is, I'm telling you, hands down, this is the best documentary I've ever watched in my life. And it just so happens to cover the most influential case ever in my life, which made me want to, get involved some way, somehow. Like this is what captivated me. This trial, everything about it. And then when I was watching this documentary, I was like, oh my God, that's right, that did happen. It's just so many things that I totally forgot about, and what was allowed in the court, what wasn't. And then all we heard or saw was just newspaper articles or just the media talking. But everything is straight up from the courtroom. Nothing that we're going to talk about is going to be outside the courtroom. And either you're here for it or you're not. So here we go. Again, I think for the most part, you guys are here for it, and you're going to appreciate it.
Week 2 of the People versus O.J. Simpson is, in many ways, the beginning of the trial. The story the prosecution is telling jurors: Simpson was a wife beater, and Nicole's murder was the conclusion of years of terrible physical abuse. Ron Goldman was simply an innocent bystander, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. I'm Roger Cossack, and this is OJ 25.
O.J. Simpson and Nicole Brown Simpson had had a troubled marriage because there were charges against him for domestic violence, and there had been pictures of that abuse.
The prosecution begins its case by establishing a pattern of domestic abuse with witnesses from law enforcement.
Mr. Darden, Ms. Clark, are you ready to call your first witness?
Good morning, Ms. Gilbert.
Good morning.
So the call came to you, right?
Right, it was the open line.
Okay, could you hear anything over the open line?
No, at the beginning, no.
Okay. Did the line remain open?
Yes, it did.
And while the line was open, at any point in time, could you hear anything?
Yes, I did.
What did you hear?
At first, I heard a female screaming.
And did you hear anything else?
Yes, I did.
And what did you hear?
I heard someone being hit.
You heard a noise that you associated with someone being hit?
Yes. Hello?
Yes, I do.
Please be seated. Please state and swear your first and last name for the record.
A woman came running out of the bushes to my left, crossed the driveway. She was a female Caucasian, blonde hair. She was wearing a bra only as an upper garment, and she had on a dark, I believe it was a dark, lightweight sweatpants or night pajama bottoms, and started yelling, "He's going to kill me, he's going to kill me." "Who is going to kill you?" She said, "OJ."
What did you say?
I said, "OJ who? Did you mean the football player, OJ, the football player?" She said, "Yes, OJ Simpson, the football player." And I saw Mr. Simpson walking towards me from the house wearing a bathrobe. He said, "I don't want that woman in my bed anymore. I got 2 other women. I don't want that woman in my bed anymore." I told him that Nicole had obvious physical injuries to her face. She said that he had hit her, and I could see trauma and open wounds to her. She had a cut, approximately 1 inch, I believe, on her left upper lip. She had a swollen right forehead. I believe her left eye or right eye was starting to blacken. It was swollen. And she had some sort of an imprint or some sort of a swollen.
I will say that the jury finding OJ not guilty after seeing this, to me, makes sense. Hands down.
One mark that you could see on her cheek. I believe that was also on the right cheek, and she had a hand imprint on her.
Let's say that OJ is guilty and he did it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this trial, and if you were sitting there as a jury member and what you saw and the evidence that was presented, why OJ was found not guilty makes sense.
Throat, on the left side of her throat. She said that OJ had slapped her, hit her with his fist, and kicked her. She wanted him arrested, and I was going to have to place him under arrest for spousal battery. She told me why the argument had occurred that night.
What did she tell you?
She said that there were 2 other women living in the house and that O.J. Simpson had sex with one of them prior to going to bed that night with her.
Is that in your report?
No.
Why not?
Because right after I finished the report and turned it in, I started getting phone calls from the news media and newspapers, and I didn't feel that it was a relevant part of the report of the crime, and it would just be a sensationalism thing. She said, "You've been out here 8 times. You never do anything about him." And she says, "I want him arrested. I want my kids back. I want to go in the house."
What did the defendant say?
I said, "You've been out here 8 times before, and now you're going to arrest me for this?" And I remember he emphasized this. I knew that if I took O.J. Simpson, a person of that stature, to the station in his underwear, that there would be repercussions because the media would show up and it would get blown out of proportion.
OJ denies that he beat Nicole. He says that he just pushed her out of bed. They tell him, listen, we have to arrest you. There's probable cause here, but we're going to let you go back in the house because he's in his underwear and his bathrobe. We'll let you go in and change clothes. Well, OJ goes in the house. Next thing you know, the police hear his Bentley taking off on the other side of Rockingham. There's another driveway. He's gone.
That's Sergeant is Detective. Detective Edwards? All right, I'm going to call you by the wrong name. Detective, are these the pictures at West Los Angeles Station, right?
That's correct.
And how many pictures did you take altogether?
3.
And you had the ability, if the pictures didn't show something you wanted to show, you could take another picture, could you not?
This is a great cross.
No.
You couldn't take any more pictures?
It was out of film.
Wait a minute, you mean to tell us that the Los Angeles Police Department only had 3 shots on a Polaroid roll on January 1st, 1989 at the West Los Angeles station?
It was out of film in that camera.
Did you get the Polaroid camera, as I recall it, you put another roll in after that finishes. Is that correct?
Right, she wanted to go home.
Well, wait a minute. How long would it take you, sir, to put another roll, slide another container inside that camera?
She wanted to go home to her children, and it wasn't my option. I had to comply with her.
So you didn't have time to take any more pictures? Is that what you're telling us?
That's correct.
You did have other film at that station?
I would imagine somewhere locked up in that station there was film.
There was other film at West Los Angeles Station. Isn't that correct, sir?
She wanted to leave. She wanted to go back to her children.
Can you answer my question? Was there other film at West Los Angeles Station?
Somewhere in that station, I'm sure there was other film.
And you could have gotten that film. Isn't that correct?
I could have eventually gotten the film.
And you could have put that film inside that Polaroid camera. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
You could have taken that camera back to Rockingham, right?
I could have.
And you could have taken the pictures that you claim you now want. Isn't that correct?
If I would have ignored her request, I could have done all those things. It's true.
You did not do that, did you?
No, I complied with her request to go to her children.
But you were a police officer out there, and the reason you take pictures is so you can preserve how the person looked for years later. Isn't that correct, sir?
Exactly.
Now, pleading before this court to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
I so swear.
Did he deny causing those injuries?
No, he did not.
Did he admit causing those injuries?
Yes, he did. He told me that he was sorry for what he did to Nicole and that he didn't mean to harm her in any way and that he would seek counseling with her.
Simpson is charged with spousal abuse. He pleads no contest. He's sentenced to 2 years probation, 120 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, a $200 fine, and is ordered to make a $500 donation to a woman's shelter.
Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please.
Mr. Shipp.
This is an amazing testimony. Okay, so
as I was just walking through the door of the courtroom,
okay,
I actually really felt my legs shake.
Okay, so the reason that this is out of all the testimony that we're going to hear and see together, This is a top 5 testimony. This is a very important testimony. This is Ron Shipp. This is a good friend of OJ. But it's considered a former friend. But we'll see why. I think it's very powerful. Black man taking the stand, testifying for the prosecution. I'm just talking about your facts, girl. I'm not talking about the fear. I'm talking about your facts. So I'm a faxy, fax broad. That's why I kind of let that go when you wrote that earlier. I'm a faxy. Here we go.
I literally actually felt like I was going to the gas chamber. It was really weird.
Did you consider Nicole Brown a friend?
Yes, I did.
As you did the defendant?
Yes, I did.
And do you and the defendant remain friends today?
Well, I still love the guy, but
And that's a great comment.
I don't know.
I love him.
This is a weird situation I'm sitting here in.
Truth.
You say you still love him?
Sure.
Now that was a really weird moment. OJ looked at me and smiled. And then I swear, it was like something just went, like hit me right there. I went, whoa. But he actually smiled like the old days.
I was a police officer at the time, and I was assigned to West Los Angeles Division.
Did you ever visit Nicole Brown at Rockingham?
Yes, I did. She just kind of got into actually what had happened and started telling me what had happened between her and OJ.
What injuries did you see at that time?
I couldn't see it that well because I remember she had makeup on, but if I remember, there was some swelling about her head somewhere. I remember it was covered up pretty good.
There was an argument over some gift that supposedly OJ had given somebody else, and she was upset about it. OJ, had slapped her and chased her around, and she, ended up outside with only with her bra on. And I think I told her, I said, Nicole, I said, when I was talking to OJ on the phone, he said he was trying to hold you off. He said you were the aggressor. And it was an isolated incident. And that's when she looked at me and she said, he said, isolated? And she had all these pictures. And she goes, this is what's happened to me in the past. And I looked at those pictures and I went, whoa, And the first thing, of course, was going through my mind that, I'm like, man, OJ's a batterer, And at that point when I saw those photos, this can't be the guy that I admire, the guy that never seemed mad. I felt so bad, and as we were talking, she started crying. I've never seen Nicole cry.
Were you ever assigned to teach any particular subject at the police academy?
Yes, I was.
And what was that subject?
Domestic violence.
Did you show her the profile of the battered woman?
Yes, I did.
The victim's profile?
Yes, I did.
Did you discuss it with her?
Yes, I did.
And I went over all the profiles and,
Fay resin.
The batterer, and she looked at the what I was showing her. She goes, that's him, that's him, that's him, that's him. And I went, oh, man, And she goes, could you do me a favor and maybe, go over these profiles with OJ? And I said, sure.
OJ made a remark to me. He said that he didn't think that he was a batterer. And I explained to him, I said, hey, man, you hit her. She's got marks. You're a batterer.
Prosecutors want the jury to hear about a conversation Shipp has with OJ the night after the murders.
Did you notice anything unusual about the defendant's hand that time?
Yes, I noticed that he had on his left hand, I think one of his fingers was bandaged, white bandage on it.
Did you pose any question to him at that time?
Yes, I asked him how he cut his finger.
And what did he say?
So he did it in Chicago.
He said he smashed a glass in Chicago and cut his finger. And then I said, oh, okay. And then after that, somebody else had asked him, OJ, what happened to your finger? And he said, well, I was chipping golf balls out in the front yard and cut my finger. Another guy came by and asked, OJ, what happened to your finger? And he said, I was getting the cell phone out of the Bronco.
He asked me how long does it take DNA to come back. He kind of jokingly just said, you know, to be honest, Shipp, that's what he called me, Shipp. He said, I've had some dreams of killing her.
Did he say how many dreams he'd had of killing her?
No, he did not.
Did he say it was more than one?
He just said dreams, plural.
I got in the car when I left, and I drove home crying. And I called my wife. First thing I did, I called my wife and told her, I said, Nina, I think OJ killed her. And she goes, you're kidding me? I said, no, I think he did it. And it was a real sad moment, you know, for me. I mean, because this guy was everything to me. I mean, everything.
Isn't it true, sir, that you mentioned to Mr. Simpson that the police had found a glove on his property?
Okay, this is the listen. This cross-examination. When I first saw this, I laughed a lot because of the man.
Graphic images.
He's
discretion is advised.
Just enjoy this with me, I guess. But he's just really awkward and.
Everyone
Bless his heart.
O.J. Simpson's dream team as Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, and F. Lee Bailey. But there are other lawyers on the case. Carl Douglas cross-examines Ron Shipp and tries to make him look like a liar and an alcoholic.
Carl had a lot of important jobs. Johnny had originally given Carl and I both a number of witnesses to examine at the trial. And one of Carl's witnesses came first, which was Ron Shipp. And that was a particularly awful day for the defense.
And wouldn't you agree that this statement about this supposed dream is a pretty bad thing about Mr. Simpson?
Yes, it is.
So did you lie when you didn't tell me about that dream?
I sure did.
You did. You've lied a few times, haven't you, sir?
Never in court.
Isn't it true, sir, that you were hopeful that you would be able to garner some publicity by making up false allegations about Mr. Simpson?
No, it's not true at all.
Didn't you think, sir, that by concocting this story about Mr. Simpson, it might enhance your own personal profile?
Mr. Douglas, I put all my faith in God and my conscience. Since Nicole's been dead, I've felt nothing but guilt, my own personal guilt, that I didn't do as much as I probably should have.
But let me ask you this. Didn't you think that by being a witness in this case, it would enhance your own personal profile?
No, sir.
Aren't you an actor?
Sir, I have done some acting. Yes, I have.
Let's talk about that. Isn't it true, sir, that by being the witness who has a conversation with Mr. Simpson, that it is going to possibly enhance your profile around the world? Oh, well, you may answer the question.
Mr. Douglas, there's no way, shape, or form that I would sit here and go through all this, put my family through this for an acting career. I could care less if I do any acting.
You do realize, Mr. Shipp, that by testifying as you have, you are going to enhance the name of Ron Shipp around the world.
Just like you're enhancing Carl Douglas by being Mr. Attorney here.
You realize that too, right?
So,
so now you're
all right, let's go.
Well, I mean, that's what everybody's, you know, that's what they say. People are going to see you. But that's not why I'm doing this, Mr. Douglas. I'm doing this for my conscience and my peace of mind. I would not have the blood of Nicole on Ron Shipp. I can sleep at night, unlike a lot of others.
Chris Darden had been recruiting me pretty much and saying, hey, you know, you need to help us out. You need to testify with the stuff that you know. And I told him I didn't want anything to do with it. And Chris Darden did something that I thought was genius on his part, because he called me down to the district attorney's office. So I sat down and someone said, hey, Chris, you got a phone call. And he went, oh, okay. And he gets up and he walks away. And I look and I sit there and I see what I knew was a homicide book, you know, and Ron and Nicole. And I just opened it up. And I looked at the pictures of Ron, and I looked at the pictures of Nicole, and when I saw the pictures of her, I mean, that just ripped me to shreds. I just went, man, this is like really, really crazy. And when Chris came back, you know, and I just looked at him and said, you know, I'll testify. And he goes, huh? I said, I'll testify, man. I'll testify.
Isn't it true, sir, that Simpson never said anything to you about there being blood found in the car?
No, it's not true.
Isn't it true, sir, that Mr. Simpson said nothing to you about blood being found in the house?
That's not true.
Isn't it true, sir, that you mentioned to Mr. Simpson that the police had found a glove on his property?
I had no idea what they found in that house. Nothing.
Didn't you take Mr. Simpson out to behind the garage to show him the area where the glove was supposedly found?
This is sad, OJ, but no, this is really sad.
Your Honor, I move to strike that.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are to disregard Mr. Shipp's direct comment to the defendant. Mr. Shipp, please, you're instructed not to do that.
Ron Shipp just looked over at OJ at one point and just started talking directly to him as if no one else was in the room. It was just this like very real moment, and that was on Carl's watch. And it wasn't Carl's fault, but it caused OJ to insist that the second-tier lawyers not get to examine any other witnesses.
You drink a lot, don't you?
I used to.
You've had a drinking problem, haven't you?
Yeah, in the past, I have.
Your alcohol problem started when?
When I was a police officer.
About what year did the problem start?
I'd say it probably kind of got out of hand, I think, around maybe 83.
And you believe that your alcohol problem ended when?
Probably when I left the police department.
Which would have been 89.
89.
You were suspended for 30 days while you worked at the academy, were you not?
No, I was not.
Wasn't there occasion, sir, when you came to the academy with alcohol in your breath?
Yes, there was.
Didn't you receive a discipline as a result of that conduct?
Yes, I did.
What was that discipline?
I received 15-day suspension.
When you say, Mr. Shipp, that you didn't have a drug problem, an alcohol problem after 1989, are you saying by that you have not been drunk since 1989?
No, I'm saying, to me, a drinking problem, and let me explain this. You know, when I did have a drinking problem, I was the one that told myself, according to all my friends and family, everybody was shocked. It was me, it was my standards.
I respect that, but my question is, you still have gotten drunk since 89, haven't you?
I'd say yes.
Were you and he close friends?
I'd say we were pretty good friends. We never went out to dinner like on a regular basis and stuff like that. But.
Did you ever go out to dinner with him and you ever?
Well, when he was trying to have me help him get back with Nicole, yeah, he was real.
You and he went out to dinner?
He took me out a couple of times.
O.J. Simpson is a football fan, isn't he?
Yeah, he loves football. Yes, he does.
He goes to games a lot,
yes,
doesn't he? You and O.J. Simpson have never attended a football game together in the 26 years that he's been your supposed friend, have you?
Not one.
You're not really this man's friend, are you, sir?
Well, okay, all right. If you want me to really explain it, I guess.
Moving along, basically the whole point of that was to show that
as week 2 of the O.J. Simpson trial continues, the defense calls
if it wasn't the dream team doing it, you see how struggling it was? Okay.
out prosecution witness Ron Shipp for behaving inappropriately in front of the jury, specifically accusing him and some of the family members of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown of exchanging congratulatory gestures after he finished his testimony.
I saw Mrs. Goldman gesturing to Ron Shipp and telling him what a wonderful job she did and going like he did and going like this while the jury was sitting right there.
Did she make a thumbs up gesture?
Yeah, she was also talking very loud and she said, Ron, you did a great job. like that.
When Mr. Ron Shipp left the witness stand, finally, he walked through the gates there, and he made what has been called a power sign toward the Brown family. This was seen by people in the back row, and the jury was apparently still here. The court needs, again, perhaps to inquire or check with your staff or check with the photographers in the back row.
While you were directing your attention to counsel at sidebar, I was conferring with Mr. Simpson, and Mr. Shipp continually was staring at us, was mouthing some type of word in some type of attempt to either communicate with me or with Mr. Simpson, was making very unusual facial expressions that would go from a grimace to a smirk, and it was in front of the jury, and I found it myself to be very, very uncomfortable, and I tried to direct my attention away from him.
What I saw was a witness who didn't know where to look. He didn't want to sit there and stare at the jury. He could not stare at the audience, so he was looking around, as is typical of a witness when the attorneys are at sidebar. I didn't see him make any unusual expressions, other than those typical and consistent with a witness who is just trying to determine what to do while the attorneys are at sidebar.
All right, well, if we have any luck, maybe Court TV has had the focus on.
He asks for Court TV to run a fucking. Oh my god, you guys, this is nuts. So judge just says, well, maybe Court TV just grabbed some, footage of the power phone, like the power. I'm just like, wow. Let's just roll back. Let's roll back that B film. Judge Ito asked Court TV for the tape, but the camera wasn't on Shipp at the moment in question. Isn't that insane? Hey, TMZ, can we get your tape? Sure. Yes, you can.
I asked Mr. Shipp during the break if he mouthed something to the defendant while we were at sidebar, and he told me that, yes, in fact, he did, and I intend to ask him on redirect what it was, since it was done in the presence of the jury. I'd like to ask the jury saw it. I'd like to know what it is he said to him. I'd like him to know what it is he said to him.
I don't think that's proper, Your Honor. That's not evidence, and I think the court should simply admonish.
I'm going to admonish, and communications between a witness and a defendant during the course of the trial, I don't think are relevant to anything unless there's something highly unusual. I'm not going to get into that in front of the jury. All right, let's have the jurors, please.
Did we learn what he said?
Okay, hold on. What did he say, Mr. Darden? What's your offer of proof?
He said, tell the truth.
I'd object, Your Honor.
You would.
Ron Shipp's testimony is a dramatic example of different perspectives covering the Simpson trial. The national media reports it one way. The African-American media, led by the LA Sentinel, reports it another.
The Sentinel saw itself as an advocate for the black community, and it presented viewpoints that one wouldn't typically see in the pages of the LA Times.
Consider this. This is the LA Times coverage of Shipp's testimony.
The foundation of journalistic practice is this idea of reporting facts. And facts are things that can be verified with evidence of various sorts, and that, two different observers should come away with the same understanding if indeed it's a fact.
Now compare that with the LA Sentinel's treatment of the same testimony.
Obviously, that's a very different perspective than, say, the one that the LA Times took. They saw the police officer Shipp as possibly a race traitor who, again, as a part of the police force, who has been known to do things to convict blacks who maybe weren't deserving of conviction. And the fact that, he had a drinking issue and it was more fuel to the fire. So, again, different frames brought to the same testimony lead to radically different interpretations of what it means.
Your Honor, I have here what appears to be an LAPD 911 incident report, may be marked People's 22.
My name is Catherine Bowe, C-A-T-H-E-R-I-N-E.
During 1992 and 1993, did you live next door to Nicole Brown?
Yes, I did.
Directing your attention to the last week of April 1992, at about 11:30 p.m., did you see the defendant at that time?
Yes, I did.
And where were you when you saw the defendant?
I was in my upstairs bedroom.
And where was the defendant when you saw him?
He was on the sidewalk below.
Is this bitch on Xanax?
What did you see the defendant do?
I saw him walking around on the sidewalk, walking from Shetland up Gretna Green, slowly.
How long did the man remain on the sidewalk? The man you identified as the defendant.
All the time that my husband was downstairs,
How much time was that?
there were 3 minutes.
Did your husband call 911?
Yes, he did.
What happened next?
I went to tell him that it was OJ.
My name is Carl Colby.
What caused you to call 911?
Well, it was an evening, approximately 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, and it's a residential neighborhood, very quiet. And sometimes before retiring,
That is Kardashian's brother.
Go check the locks and look around downstairs, make sure the lights are off, things like that. And I happened to look outside, and I saw a man outside on the sidewalk.
And what was that man doing?
He was standing on the sidewalk looking at what apparently was the residence next door.
And what did you see the man do after you called 911?
He went back to the original position and looked at the residence and then left. After I'd made the call, I recognized him.
And who was that man?
It was Mr. Simpson. Well, I was embarrassed that I'd called 911 because I didn't feel that Mr. Simpson was a threat to me or to anyone else in our neighborhood.
911 emergency. Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please. Okay, what does he look like? He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record. Could you just send somebody over here?
It came down to a stalker, and the stalker was Simpson. So he would give himself 2 or 3 hours to see what she's going to do and who she has come over to her place, and he would spy on her.
Okay, what is he doing there? He just drove up again. He just drove over. Okay, wait a minute, what kind of car is he in? He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in. Okay, wait a minute, what's your name? Nicole Simpson. Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever? Yeah. Okay, and wait a minute, we're telling the police. What is he doing? Is he threatening you? I'm going nuts.
Terry, T-E-R-R-I, Moore, M-O-O-R-E.
What priority code was it given at 9:44 p.m.?
It was given a code 2 priority, which is urgent but not life-threatening.
When the 911 calls were played, I thought it was a really sad day. I think that was, in many ways, the turning point for public opinion against O.J. Simpson. And to hear his wife, his ex-wife, so terrified, so afraid, in one of the calls where she's screaming and she's saying, he's gonna kill me. And then contrast that actually with the other call, the second call, where she almost sounded resigned.
Has he threatened you in any way, or is he just harassing you? You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to come in again. Okay, just stay on the line. I don't want to stay on the line. Just stay on the line so we can know what's going on until the police get there, okay? Okay, Nicole? Uh-huh. Just a moment. Does he have any weapons? I don't know. Okay. He went home, now he's back. My kids are upstairs sleeping, and I don't want anything to happen.
Was that priority code upgraded at some point?
Yes,
And who upgraded the priority of that call?
I did.
Okay. What did you upgrade it to?
I upgraded it to code 2 high, which is now potentially life-threatening.
Is he inside right now? Yes. Okay, just a moment. Is he talking to you?
Yeah.
Are you locked in a room or something?
No, he can come right in. I'm not going where the kids are because the kids are.
You think he's going to hit you?
I don't know.
Okay. Stay on the line. Don't hang it up, okay?
What kept her staying? What kept her to, stick this relationship out? I don't know. But I do know that they had a love affair. And what that love affair was, I'll never understand.
Should we just treat the whole ticket as a truth to help you out?
Yes, I do.
Please be seated and state and spell your first and last name.
On October 25, 1993, around 10 p.m., did you respond to a 911 call for help?
Not for help, but I did respond to a 911 call.
And did you respond to 325 South Gretna Green?
Yes, sir.
The home of Nicole Brown?
Yes.
Why did you go to that location?
The 911 call stated it was a domestic dispute. It was marked code 2 high, which is in an urgent call. She was visibly shaken. She was upset. She was concerned, and she was scared. The door had been split near the top and bottom of the door.
Describe for us, if you will, the defendant's demeanor when you saw him in the rear yard.
The defendant was agitated. He was upset, pacing back and forth, and he was speaking loudly.
These pictures of her and these recordings of her and her telling people that she was afraid for her life, almost like she was speaking from the grave, and it really impacted me emotionally. But when they interviewed the jurors who were dismissed after that, they said that they didn't think it had any relevance to the case. And so the impact on the jury was not the same as the impact maybe on some of the reporters or some people in the public. And I found that to be really, really impactful and really, really sad and haunting.
On Friday afternoon, February 3rd, Nicole's older sister, Denise, testifies. Her physical resemblance to her late sister is striking, and her raw anger and hostility to her former brother-in-law is palpable.
Denise Brown, DENISEBROWN.
Miss Brown, you are Nicole Brown's oldest sister?
Yes, I am.
Do you have other sisters?
Yes, I do.
How many?
There's Dominique and Tanya, and of course, Nicole.
You know the defendant seated here at the end of council table?
Yes, I do.
Is your former brother-in-law?
Yes, he is.
When did you first meet the defendant?
Back in 1977.
And where was he when you met him?
He was playing football for Buffalo.
Was your sister Nicole and the defendant dating back then in 1977?
Yes, they were.
Was the defendant married at that time?
Yes, he was.
Miss Brown, your sister Nicole married the defendant in February 1985?
Yes, she did.
Did you attend the wedding?
Yes, I did. I was the maid of honor.
Did you, your sister Wendy, your sister Nicole, and Juliana, the four of you, and the defendant went out and went to the Red Onion in Santa Ana?
Yes, we did.
Did anything unusual happen that night in the Red Onion?
Yes.
What was that?
Well, we were all drinking and goofing around and being loud and dancing and having a great time. And then at one point, OJ grabbed Nicole's crotch and said, "This is where babies come from." and this belongs to me. And Nicole just sort of wrote it off like it was nothing, like, you know, like she was used to that kind of treatment. And it was like, I thought it was really humiliating, if you ask me.
And when he said this, and when he grabbed her in the crotch, were there people around?
Oh yeah, the bar was packed.
Strangers?
Yeah. Yeah, he was talking to the strangers.
Did the defendant appear mad or angry or upset when he grabbed his sister's crotch and made these statements in front of these strangers?
No, he wasn't angry. It was his. That's the way just the way he acted, the way it was like, this belongs to me, this is mine. He wasn't angry when he said it, he just made it a point. He wanted it to be known.
And during the time that these strangers were approaching him and shaking hands and things like that, did he appear to shy away from the attention at all?
Oh, no, not at all. He loves the attention. He loves it. He's got a big ego. It feeds his ego.
Disregard the last answer regarding the defendant's ego. That question and answer is not relevant to the issue before the court at this time. And Ms. Brown, if I can ask you, would you please listen carefully to the question that the attorneys asked of you, and if you would answer just the precise question that they asked you, this will go a lot easier.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
You recall an occasion when you and Ed McCabe and Nicole and the defendant went out to dinner?
Yes, I do.
And where did the four of you go after you left the La Cantina restaurant?
We went to OJ's house. OJ and Nicole's house.
On Rockingham?
Yes.
Now, had you had something to drink at the restaurant before?
Yeah, margaritas.
Okay, and what did you do when you returned to the defendant's home on Rockingham?
We were sitting at the bar talking, having some more drinks, and talking.
Okay, and while you were talking, did you say something to the defendant?
Yes, I did.
What did you say to him?
I told him he took Nicole for granted, and he blew up. He got...
Right. Ms. Brown, if you would, don't volunteer anything beyond the actual question, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Darden.
You told the defendant that he took Nicole for granted?
Yes.
Why did you tell him that?
Because she did everything.
Sustained.
What reaction, if any, was there by the defendant when you told him that he took your sister Nicole for granted?
He got extremely upset. He started yelling at me. I'll take her for granted. I do everything for her. I give her everything. And he continued. And then a whole fight broke out. And pictures started flying off the walls. Clothes started flying. Ran upstairs, got clothes, started flying down the stairs. And grabbed Nicole, told her to get out of his house. Wanted us all out of his house. Picked her up, threw her against a wall. Picked her up, threw her out of the house. She ended up on her... She ended up falling. She ended up on her elbows and on her butt. Then he threw Ed McCabe out. We were all sitting there screaming and crying. And then he grabbed me and threw me out of the house.
The raw emotion of Denise Brown's testimony closed week 2 of the O.J. Simpson trial. A week the prosecution painted a picture of domestic violence that led to murder. In week 3, Denise Brown continues her testimony, describing the hours before her sister is murdered, including the demeanor of the man accused of killing her. That's next on O.J. 25. I'm Roger Kotsak.
This is going to be a good series. what are your guys' thoughts so far? Give it to me, and then we're going to close this out. So, yeah. I see a lot of people, I don't think anybody has seen this before. If they have, make yourself known. That went by too fast. Want more? See, I told you that's how it's going to be. I thought about giving you guys 3. I even thought about doing 3. But what I am going to do is tomorrow, I'm going to give you guys 2 more so we lay a nice foundation. So, thank you, Johnson there. Yes, this is great. I think so too. I saw a lot I hadn't seen before. Yeah, and we're just getting started. Something that I just thought was interesting is that I just, at first when I saw this, I was like, why aren't they objecting to all of this? Like, I mean, why isn't the defense objecting to the relevancy of any of this? And they're going to say, well, it's relevant because what? This is a pattern, right? I just have never seen in my entire life. The first, I mean, we're to 9 witnesses right here. The first 9 witnesses were straight up basically character witnesses, more or less. Vicky says, I was doing talk radio when the trial took place. We were a living and breathing case every day. Lots of memories. Thanks for showing. You're welcome, Vicky. Hopefully you stick around and enjoy this little series that I'm going to do. It just, to me, it has a lot to do with Aliquippa in a way. To see that, you know, race was a big thing, you know, in the 1990s. Rodney King, obviously the Mark Fuhrman being labeled a racist, his choice words that he used in North Carolina. And then with everything I'm seeing in Aliquippa, I just feel like people want to make it seem like it's race. You know, there's a lot of race barriers still, and I believe that that's not the case, honestly. But rather somebody portraying that in the media. It is 2022, and it's halfway through 2022. So we got 6 more months until it's 2023. This is one of the best documentaries that I've ever come across. I wanted to share this with you guys, but I also wanted to break down some things and show some correlations that I have come across with the Rachel Del Tano, Sheldon Jr., and everything I'm doing in Aliquippa. So I think that's the other reason that motivated me to, you know, to put this into my schedule, to be able to show this and go over this with my viewers because of everything I'm doing in Aliquippa. So, this is everything to do with the trial. And I guarantee you there's things that you guys will have never even known. But I promise you, if you actually take the time to watch this with my channel, with the people that are amazing in this group, you will see that now I see why the jurors said not guilty. That's my thing. A lot of the testimony sounded like hearsay. Yes, 100% I agree. So yeah, I do want to thank all my mods tonight. You guys are always awesome. But it's nice that a lot of you guys could be in here. I know that it's on the weekend, and so good way to compare and contrast cases. Yes, that's the plan here. You know, Rachel Del Tano was murdered. It's unsolved, in my opinion. When they said that it was not guilty, OJ was found not guilty. That means that who did it, right? I do believe that OJ Simpson knows who did it. I do not believe he did physically it. I do know, or I do think that he knows, but we're going to break that all down as we go on. Just always, please be respectful in chat. Be kind in chat, love. And as long as you do that, you'll never have a problem here. Again, consider joining Fight for a Family or being a member here. A lot of interesting things are going to be happening this week. I will be in PA a lot this week, and a lot is happening. So, and I'm excited to bring you guys the facts. So again, I appreciate you all. Join me tomorrow for another two episodes. I will put up a notification And I'm going to do it a little bit earlier. I like to do Sunday afternoon lives. So right now I'm looking at between 3 and 5 tomorrow. And I'll do 2 more. And yeah, I will see you guys then. Have a good night. Get some rest. Is Fight for a Family info and links. Here we go. It's www.fightforafamily.com. If you go right there, that's my website. It'll take you right there. I know that Maple Beef does a nice job of trying to post that stuff. So, again, thank you to my subscribers. Thank you to my members. Obviously, I love you mods. Those of you guys that lurk around, well, hey, at least you can say that I at least like being told to go watch over Atlanta's channel and see what she says. Because you're going to get awesome content. So take care, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. Crazy Chick, always a pleasure to chat with you. But yeah, I have another 2 episodes. We'll be doing episodes 3 and 4 and breaking down some stuff. I know some of the back, we're just dealing with foundational stuff. I'm just going to get that out of the way. But the episodes that we can really dig into stuff, that's where it's going to be, fun for the viewers that are watching and able to participate in what they think and stuff like that. So again, take care, and we'll see everybody soon. Okay. Good night.